Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today, Fresh Thinking on ITSM. A few quick notes before we start. Your phone lines are muted, so if you have any questions, please use the chat panel. And please send the questions to all presenters. That helps me field and assign the questions as we go through the webinar. Secondly, I am recording today, so you will receive an email from me no later than tomorrow. Actually, the email will come from ReadyTalk no later than tomorrow, and have a link so you can access this recording as well as a copy of the slides. And lastly, we will have a demo later, and Jeff will be showing some things in our platform. You'll find it helpful to be in full screen mode, so you may want to do that now. If you're not already there, go ahead and go to full screen mode. So at this point, I will turn it over to Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen. Don?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen, and with me is Jeff Benedict, my classic co-host who heads up our ITSM practice and leads our innovation efforts. If you're new to our webinar series, welcome. If you're a past attendee, thanks for joining us again. Our goal, as always, is to share valuable information and insights that you can use in your planning and activities right now. The topic we'll explore today is fresh thinking on ITSM. So here's our agenda, as you can see. After a very little bit about Evergreen, we'll dive into the topic, and then we'll briefly demonstrate some of the concepts we've discussed in our always evolving view of a very advanced self-service portal and catalog experience, which happens to be built on ServiceNow. Then we will answer questions, excuse me, if you have any. So briefly about Evergreen, we're a US-based consulting firm. We've worked with hundreds of mid-market, Fortune 1000 companies and public sector organizations, as well as enterprise level, to improve their IT service management execution. Over the past 20 years, we've delivered more than 4,000 IT service management projects. We are a full lifecycle firm, meaning we have both process and technology consulting in the same company. We are one of a few top-tier or gold US ServiceNow partners, and a lot of our business is done in the ServiceNow ecosystem. Since we're also a certified application developer, and we actually do develop solutions on the platform, we get very early access for upcoming ServiceNow releases. As an example, we typically begin beta testing and feedback loops about 6 months before the next release. This insight helps our customers to make better long-term decisions. As we work with clients across the US, here is the #1 problem that they have. This is what they tell us. They can't meet their ServiceNow demand. Here's what they say. It exceeds the resources, but it has peaks and valleys too. Skilled resources are scarce. It takes 6 months to become capable. Then they can be hired away by consulting firms. And also, they'll tell us we may not have a true solution architect to help lead us. And even with expensive consultants like Evergreen, contracts, task orders, and invoicing are a lot of work. And we educate them on our business, then they're gone, and we end up having to do that again and again. So this is how most of our customers really sort of try to handle this services challenge for ServiceNow. A core internal ServiceNow team augmented by outside consultants on a project-by-project basis with possible offshore technical support. And we are so used to doing it this way that we may not even stop to think about how hard and inefficient this motion actually is. At Evergreen, we think the traditional service approach is broken, and we created Evolve to fix it. There is a huge amount of waste in project-based activity that neither you or I benefit from. Due to scheduling issues, it's hard for us to get resources available more than 70 to 75% of the time. So 25% or more gets wasted. We have a saying in consulting, and this usually gets a laugh at the workshops we do. The first project with the correct scope is the second one. And it's true for both of us, so another 15 or 20% can get lost in risk allowance to account for scope issues because we don't know each other. And so you have an astounding total of 40 to 45% that's actually can be wasted. This is why the going market rate for services is so high. As we thought about this, we came up with a solution, and we call it Evergreen Evolve, and it is a part to full-time team of senior implementation certified ServiceNow experts specifically dedicated to you over a 6-month period, so our team and your team become one team. You get dedicated U.S. thought leadership and our customer engagement managers and senior solutions architects who work closely with our offshore team of dedicated senior certified developers. Evolve gives you one flexible contract with a team that's dedicated to you, one solution to help meet both your ServiceNow tactical and strategic project demand, whatever's coming your way across your portfolio of need, as much or as little or as much as you'd like to see handled. So you may be paying $180 to $220 an hour today for these kind of skills. Because Evolve captures the huge amount of waste, we can pass the savings on to you in the form of very low rates, averaging from $65 to $118 per hour. And best of all, at least I think from your perspective, there is no long-term lock-in. You can cancel an Evolve contract anytime with only 30 days notice. So that's enough about that. As we look at our challenge for the day, if you walk backwards, you can only see where you've been and almost by definition have no vision for where you're going. Are we walking backward in IT service management? Are we backing into our future? I believe that many of us are, and a lot of it's because of the same tired thinking on incident, problem, change, and knowledge. I think it's time to wake up. I don't think this is good enough any longer. At Evergreen, we think traditional ITSM thinking is wrong because it puts the customer, the people whom we're really doing this for, last. I'm really excited about our topic today because this and the next slide have been my call to action in many past webinars. And today, we're going to focus directly on these components. We need to start with the customer. If we start with the customer, it will actually change what we do, what we think about, and what we do in incident, problem, knowledge, and change. And this can begin any time in our journey. Modern customer-centric companies are built on the combination of beautiful self-service plus automation. It makes them fast, accurate, consistent, scalable, high quality, and very efficient. No one at Amazon provisions your servers. No one at Uber calls the driver. No one at Airbnb books your reservation. It's self-service combined with lights-out automation, and no one touches it unless it breaks. You can't call them. Heck, you can barely even email them. And yet, they have the highest customer satisfaction ratings in their industries. For example, Amazon is more highly rated than Nordstrom and Costco. How is this possible? It's because they premeditatedly built a beautiful, complete customer, self-service driven experience so you don't have to call or email them. Now, I live in Virginia, and you may be surprised to see the logo for the Virginia DMV on the right-hand side there. Traditionally, service at any DMV is so bad that comedians make fun of it. And that was true for my DMV in Virginia 10 years ago. But now, boy, time changed. It is a leading example of beautiful self-service tied to automation. I actually enjoy engaging with the DMV. I just almost can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true. If a DMV can do it, then why can't we? According to HDI surveys, around 80% of IT organizations offer self-service options to their customers. But according to an ongoing survey by Happy Signals, represented here in the pink, with 100,000 responses as of yesterday, 64% of service desk interactions are via phone or email, 2/3. This is exactly what we have been doing for more than the past decade. Exactly. One-to-one unique human interaction. Terrifically inefficient for both the customer and the provider. It's almost hard to believe. Worse yet, even though 80% of us claim to have self-service for our customers, according to the customers themselves, self-service interactions, and that's the orange circle there you'll see on the screen, are only 12% and have the lowest overall happiness rating at 53. Clearly, people really like self-service, as long as it isn't bad. We cannot do any fresh thinking on IT service management if it requires one-to-one custom human interaction. As we often do, covering a few idle definitions is useful for getting on the same page. 4 are relevant today: incident, problem, knowledge, and change. I know we all know these. Incident is supposed to be service interruption or degradation of quality. For most, incident, though really practically, is the front door of IT for the customer. They will call for not only interruptions, but with questions and requests. For our purposes today, and we're not changing the idle definition, but for simplification on the topic, we will mean all inbound customer interaction when we talk about incident. Problem is where we try to reach root cause for a worthwhile issue and prevent or minimize its impact in the future. And knowledge is a store of relevant and useful information that can help our customers. Change is the process to control any modifications that could affect IT services. IDLE basically defines a service, and this is basically as something of value to a customer. So resolving a problem, answering a question, or providing something requested are all services in the eyes of a customer. And every interaction or service involves 3 constituents: the customer, the providers, and the managers. Over the past 3.5 years, we have found that all of these must be involved and have their needs met to create any truly viable service. Now, we recognize IT wants to deliver great services their customers will love, but they also need to reduce complexity and improve efficiency, accuracy, accountability, governance, and speed and quality of service. Not only does the customer demand this, our budgets also do. To achieve this, at Evergreen, we follow an approach we call balanced design. If we begin by designing any interaction with the customer in a way that they love it and they want to use it, we can also design in what we need and have it driven by the customer's own self-service actions. Give the customer what they want to get what we need. The improvements we'll talk about today should always be considered from all 3 of these perspectives. The whole motion we're talking about today is really left-shifting one-to-one human interaction and replacing it with self-service and automation. From custom to factory-like, we're looking for highly repetitive, high-volume interactions of all sorts. Now, this is high level, but incidents feed problem, and if successful, problem lowers incidents by preventing them from recurring. Incident, inbound interaction like questions, feeds opportunities for knowledge, and successful knowledge lowers these. Requests create fulfillment work, which create opportunities for self-service and automation, reducing or even eliminating IT's work. Change does have quite a bit of interaction with problem, as half or more problems have a root cause of failed changes made in the infrastructure, and of course fixing them lowers future incidents. So what we're doing is looking for opportunity, like detective work. We want to investigate these areas and make changes that improve the customer's experience and lower IT's work. Here's a process that can give some consistency to our efforts. We start with a broad approach to discover any possible areas for improvement. And since we can't fix everything, high level we review them for the highest apparent value opportunities. Next, we take the top improvement opportunities and we dig in. We discuss the causes and possible measures to prevent them, thinking out of the box. That helps us further refine and identify the ones that appear to be very high value and can be significantly improved. Next, we take those opportunities and look at the processes end to end. How can we make it better or more simple and re-engineer them? Then we determine 1, can we eliminate part or all of the manual customer interaction through self-service? And 2, can we partially or completely eliminate the manual labor to do the work through automation? Last, we publish it, get it out where it can be seen for consumption, maybe in a service portal and catalog, maybe in other places as well, could be in the intranet, right? And then lead our customers to it. So this is our 4-step process. Problem is the easiest place to start. It's a collection of thorny issues that we're already trying to understand and prevent in the future. Right up front, it's important to make it clear that many problem items may be too complex or too infrequent to be good candidates for elimination or automation. what we're trying to do, but some probably will be. So we know the opportunities are valuable, and we may be well on the path to understanding and resolution. But what we may also find is, while we get to the root cause, we may not be taking the last two steps here, really trying to automate or eliminate the issue rather than creating more manual or human-based workarounds, and then leading the customer to different options or other choices even that might eliminate the possibility of the problem altogether. As we mentioned, for this webinar only, we're thinking of incident as all the inbound customer interaction. As such, it's always going to be the greatest source of opportunity for improvement. But it does have some thorns too. You can't usually just walk in and say, hey, hand me your list of your top 10 incidents, queries, and requests over the last 12 months by volume and by type of user. But a little detective work here can go a very long way. Interview some of the level 1 and even level 2 people. Questions we can ask them. What are the 5 things that seem like you are dealing with the most? What are the top 3 or 4 repetitive things you do all the time? What do you hate or like doing most? What do your customers complain about most? And if you had a magic wand, what is the number 1 thing you would fix? Then how about the number 2 thing? Then take that list and ask them, now tell me, how would you fix these things? What are your ideas, if any, on how we could eliminate this through self-service or by giving fewer but better choices to the customer and help them put on their consulting hat to help us? Then we want to do the same exercise with a few representative customers. This does work, and it doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, you could do this next week, right? It can be done. So next we take the top candidates, then we improve, simplify, automate, and eliminate, and then publish and lead for consumption, right? Through the different mechanisms, the service request and knowledge. Are there any alternatives to detective work? Or better yet, ways to augment it? Absolutely. 80% of the software and hardware our customers use to do their jobs every day is commercial, off-the-shelf stuff used by thousands of companies. So if we want to find out what issues matter to our customers, we can find many of them on the internet. I did a Google search on top 10 issues of Microsoft Word and found this list with a lot of detail supporting them from techiewarehouse.com. A search for Excel issues yielded Clement Needlesue's blog, and Microsoft website give me the most common issues of SharePoint. Pretty cool, huh? Here are a couple more, both around PowerPoint problems or how-tos. I learned something new. I didn't know Wiki has a site called WikiHow. Now, I have an old 2001 Suburban. I'm pretty frugal and I'm handy, and that's a bad combination. A few months ago, I had to replace the fog lamps on the truck. I ordered the parts on Amazon, searched on YouTube, I found and watched a 10-minute video, and I replaced the lights. Without the video, I would not have been able to figure it out. With it, relatively easy. I could probably have gotten the same information just as easily from the Suburban 2500 users forum out on the internet. I bet you have a story like this too. But do your customers? We provide hundreds of different technologies to our customers and organizations. It's estimated that less than 10% of the software features are used on average. Does it matter how well people use their tools? We may make them easy to get or react to requests for help, but does that meet our responsibility to the business? Doesn't our mission sound something like empowering employees through technology to achieve competitive differentiation? I ask my customers, what are you doing to train people in ongoing effective use of technology? What are you doing to find, qualify, and introduce new innovative solutions that can make a difference in the value they deliver? While it may be different for you, for many the answer is not much. Maybe thinking so much about availability and reacting has blinded us to our real responsibility. So the question I ask is, when will IT accept the responsibility for technical literacy? It certainly is a great opportunity to make a very significant difference. If we think of knowledge as share and learn, It brings relevant information in from inside and outside the firewall, from vendors, how-to sites, user communities, and other customers. It can change the value and power of self-support because it is faster and better than we can provide ourselves. Our work in incident and problem identifies opportunities for us against which we can align these resources inside and outside the firewall to eliminate work through self-service. Then we publish and lead by bringing our customers to a powerful and easy-to-use self-service workspace to get what they need fast. The vendor multimedia learning support out there is phenomenal. As an example, Adobe brings a wealth of interactive tools and training, in this case, for the Creative Cloud. Microsoft, tools that probably account for 50% of the average worker's daily activities, offers a tremendous amount of multimedia support for their software. Here are a wide range of training tools for Office and a very active Microsoft-sponsored SharePoint community site. The YouTube example I mentioned before is how people solve problems and learn how to do new things. While we can't guarantee it's 100% accurate, can we do that for the knowledge we create and offer? And many times, it's old and stale, isn't it? Community-based or social scoring gives us pretty sharp insight as to what is seen as valuable and what isn't by the customers using it. And as long as it's active, we can even know if the information is stale or not. I mentioned WikiHow earlier. This is a competitor to YouTube in helping us. Their mission is to help everyone on the planet learn how to do anything. That's pretty broad, but it's pretty cool too. I excerpted part of the technical areas they support on the lower right-hand side. Phone and gadgets, software, operating system. That all sounds like IT relevant stuff to me. Leverage collaborative workspaces to create very active communities of interest inside your company with the ability to share and search files, processes, best practices, even code. Now, I bet for many of you, there is a collaborative initiative ongoing in your firm. And the opportunity is, how do we harness it, right? How do we get in front of it and use it for our purposes too? Here's an example using a popular collaborative product called Slack, which we at Evergreen put in place 14 months ago. The impact we have seen from it is almost not believable. It has dramatically improved knowledge sharing and the ability for consultants anywhere in the world at Evergreen to easily support each other, with a key side benefit: email traffic has gone down by over 50%. If you look down the left-hand side menu, inside that orange circle, you can see that this particular workspace, which I'm highlighting, called a channel in Slack, is named Knowledge ServiceNow. Last, what if we took it even a step further and created proactive bite-by-bite curriculum to lead our customers toward technical proficiency in the tools that matter to our business, 5 to 10 minutes a day? Then throw in a splash of gamification and active internal coaches. Check out a site called Udemy. Some call it the future of education. They now offer Udemy for Business, giving you the power to create an internal university for your own business by leveraging outside courseware and creating on your own. On the lower right, you can see 3 Excel courses. We know they're great because they're all highly rated and used by thousands. Can your knowledge make that same claim? As mentioned, much of change is complex and requires careful oversight. We often find 4 or so change types: high, medium, low, and standard, or automatically approved, normal kinds of day in, day out, really low impact changes. But this granularity isn't always that precise. For example, many times we'll find that low and medium risk changes are going through a change advisory board review and are treated with the same materiality as high risk. And we find that a lot of low risk changes could really be standard changes, automatically approved, and are only going through change process for compliance, maybe, and audit trail purposes. So we can find opportunity in medium and low risk changes, pushing mediums to low and pushing lows to standard. And we often find good volume here too, which can make it worth our while. So once we collect our suspects, we identify the best opportunities, simplify and streamline the processes, and then apply automation and self-service for the change processors to reduce labor time and speed the work. For the case of change, it really helps to have standardized, streamlined, and automated workflow processes pre-built and ready to use specifically for low-risk and standard change types. Now, while not incident, problem, knowledge, or change, let's call this part or this slide bonus area number 1. Simplifying SLAs and OLAs can really improve quality and reduce complexity and speed work. I see many customers with literally hundreds of SLAs and OLAs for no other reason than they grew organically from the bottom up all over IT. How many do we really need? How about a dozen or less? If we start with the customer, at the top, they care about a great customer experience, us meeting our timeframe commitments, and services that are fast and available when they need them. That's it. KPIs cascade down, and then they become SLAs, and then the SLAs also cast down and become OLAs as we go down this pyramid. So we start with the KPIs, we limit the choices in SLAs and OLAs, and we make sure they align with the business intent behind the KPIs. That's a simple plan for re-engineering metrics. Here's bonus number 2. Experiment with service ownership. The absolute center of the storm, or the key to changing our mentality from technical outcomes to customer-centric services, is the service owner. Even today, all of our technical activities are really services or sub-services. We want to get people to try out the role of service owner, someone who owns the success of the customer's need from request to outcome, from end to end. Now, every service we deliver is made up of lots of little services. And even though one person, let's say John Smith, owns the big service, there are lots of little services being combined from different parts of IT to make up that big service. Now, in this job, this is part of what scares John, because as a service owner, he doesn't control those people. They don't actually work for him, so how can he possibly be successful? Well, he begins explaining to everyone delivering services to him how important they are, how they fit into the big picture, and what the customer really wants. John creates meaningful mission alignment, because just mechanically doing a task is not very emotionally fulfilling. But helping a customer as part of a team, that is. And every day John will work with everyone, measuring, giving feedback, helping them improve, streamlining, encouraging the effort, and making sure they see their part in the big picture, because he has changed his view of the big picture and what he's responsible and cares about. Now, asking someone in IT to volunteer for the role of service owner makes everyone, it's like the Three Stooges, makes everyone take a step backward. It's new, it's different, it feels like a lot of responsibility and visibility. Even more, what is the job and how do I do it? Here's a quick look at the service owner's dashboard we have developed in our platform in ServiceNow. It includes information on customer satisfaction, quality, availability, and delivery. If I am the service owner, I can easily see who my customers are and what they're asking for. The idea behind this is to make it the one place where the service owner goes to reactively and proactively manage their service every day. A good service owner's dashboard can make it a lot easier for people to understand and embrace the role of a service owner. Customer centricity absolutely and dramatically can change how we see incident, problem, knowledge, and change. In the words from Russell Conwell's famous book, we are sitting on acres of diamonds. There's great opportunity all around us. Starting with the top 5 or even 10 isn't all that hard. So if we haven't done so, we ought to get going. And there are best practice examples all around us. The Pareto principle that 80% of the value is in 20% of the activities absolutely holds true. We are surrounded by great global demo sites like Amazon that we use every day, so the best practices are right in front of us. And last, turning knowledge into share and learn is a wonderful opportunity for IT to change the value that it provides. The world has dramatically changed around us in over the past decade, and yet we have not. It's time for us to wake up. So that's all I've got to present today. I think I sound a little bit like a preacher today. Sorry about that. Nevertheless, that's all I've got to cover, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he can demonstrate some of these functionalities in our platform.
Thanks, Don. I should probably say amen to that preacher-ness. All right, so I'm going to start where I oftentimes start. So we're in our self-service portal, and as Don kind of teed up, the portal, is a place where we can learn about our services. Obviously, we can capture and submit those service requests, get help for our issues, as well as kind of track the status of the various requests we submit. I also like to highlight this is a good place for us to also push, alerts, announcements, prescribe content to our consumers, kind of advertise our value to our consumers all in all. And I want to start kind of in the demo here with the I want to area, and this is kind of the top 10 things for me as a consumer coming to this site. And the goal here is really to make it easy for our customers to give them kind of quick access to some of those common things, right? And this would be the output of that investigative work that Don mentioned, where we highlight what are the top volume items, what are the key value items, and we're putting them kind of front and center in front of our consumers. And I think the other thing I would highlight with this too is this should be a list that's relevant for the target user, right? So the particular item here, so for example, some users maybe get an iPhone isn't relevant for them. So we want this top 10 list to be based off of who the user is and their kind of job function and role. So let me go into one of these items, talk a little bit about, in this case, kind of a knowledge article. So this is, an area where I can do some self-solving. I can read through this document, follow the steps to get my two-step authentication set up. If I have issues or feedback or comments, I've got a place here at the bottom where I can post those. Right? And this information here becomes both valuable to other consumers interacting with this knowledge article, but also becomes actionable feedback to the authors or service owners behind this service, right, to make sure that they're publishing accurate, up-to-date, and responding to these particular feedback or entries. I've also got contextual actions here. If I had an issue with setting this up, I can quickly create an incident in context to this particular knowledge article, and then my streamline of support would be quicker because they would know it's in context to this particular topic, this particular setup activity that I'm trying to get help with. Other things, so I can always browse through the bigger list of knowledge articles, right, which I can break up into multiple different repositories or knowledge bases. Right, I can have suggestions based off of who I am and kind of what I looked at or interacted with to kind of pull out and highlight to me some of the things that might be relevant to me and my needs. Another thing I want to highlight with knowledge, and this kind of hits on Don's point of Udemy and kind of following things like YouTube videos. Those tend to be very useful in terms of being able to actually see and interact with it. So we can also embed those in the ServiceNow platform, right? We can push YouTube videos in here. We can offer our own videos or other media content and attach those and make those as consumable entities to our end users. Other things that we'll see in the I want to list, you'll see facilities, HR represented here. So this is kind of a one-stop place for me to get information about both IT matters, but also some of the other services that are provided to me. And some of these are going to be actionable, like maybe I have a question about benefits, so I come to a quick form where I can ask that question. But I can also quickly interact with an expert to start a chat session, right, to interact with them that way. Or if right now doesn't work, I can go through and schedule an appointment with the expert, find a time within the windows that works for them and works for my schedule, get on the calendar, and kind of get my questions answered in more of an interactive, one-on-one, consultative kind of manner. Another feature I want to hit on, Don mentioned kind of the share and learn. So kind of a somewhat unknown part of the ServiceNow platform and relatively new addition is this is called the community aspect of ServiceNow. It's really an extension of the knowledge base. But it really is a place where you can go into and submit your own kind of ask your questions, provide answers amongst your community members to those questions. You can vote on and rate different answers. And then the author ultimately can flag an answer as being the accepted answer to that particular question. And these can be tagged and sorted and searched on to find, in essence, content amongst your community to help solve issues that are probably prevalent and experienced from the end users themselves. So that was kind of, browsing through the community, browsing through the knowledge base. Those are obviously ways to self-solve. But if you're like me, chances are you start here, right, which is searching for information. And one thing I want to highlight is that, one thing we try to do within this portal is we try to make search, I guess as intuitive and find the best results as possible. So some of the things that we do are we do some natural language processing for this search. So when I run a search for something like I want an iPad, what's happening behind the curtains here is it's pulling out what are the true keywords, which in this case is iPad. It's classifying that I'm really looking for requesting something, so it's kind of isolating my search to catalog items. And it also filtered my results based off of tablets. Another thing that can happen in here, if I do something like this where I say I need help with, with email access, we can take some of the components of the search and send the user to maybe the more appropriate place for them to get their answers or their information. So rather than take me to a search results page of matching knowledge articles or catalog items that match help or email access, I've redirected the user based off this search to our Get Help form on the topic of email access where they can see different knowledge articles, they can interact with an expert, and then as they fill in more details, it's going to reveal additional answers for them to help self-solve their issue, to kind of walk them through that solving process. Another maybe more specific redirect kind of search element here, if I'm looking for something like what is the status, I think I've done this search before, of one of my particular records, rather than in the same kind of context, rather than take me to a list of knowledge articles that match the word status or match the word incident. It's taking me to my detail tracking page for that particular record. Now, just want to kind of highlight a little behind the curtains here, kind of what's happening with these searches. So this is part of our configuration screen. We've got basically a natural language processor that is running. So when I run this search, it's tagging out, pulling out keywords, taxonomies, concepts, entities based off of that search that I ran. And then I'll show you kind of here the management page. If I look at one of these searches, what I got back from an I want to an iPad search is a category that was relevant, a keyword that was relevant, and then from here we can apply different rules to how this is exercised or implemented within that kind of portal context. So in this case it applied a keyword filter for iPad. In case of the category, it applied a filter for catalog items, as well as a category-based filter. The other example I showed was getting help with email access, which pulled back categories, keywords, different concepts. So it kind of broke out and pulled out a lot of good information about what my search is in context to. And then one of the things that we did with this is we applied a rule that looked at a combination of those keywords, in that I'm looking for help, and I'm looking for help in regards to email access, and if so, I'm going to redirect the user to our Get Help page on the topic of email access. Another thing that Don mentioned was kind of the value of external kind of knowledge or external content, that you find in the YouTube and so forth. One of the other things that we've seen of value in the portal is kind of taking and searching beyond just our ServiceNow repositories. Right. So let me show you an example here where in our list of search records right now we've got, we're searching for business services, we're searching for catalog items, we're searching for knowledge. But I can also open this up to search an external source like this Kaleo third-party question and answer software. And when I do that, I'm going to activate that. And give it a second to save. When I run a search out here, I'm just going to do a quick keyword search for Office 365. What's happening right now is that it went against these 4 different sources. Basically what it did is it ran searches inside of ServiceNow against our kind of resident repositories, but then it also ran a web service-based search out to this Kaleo software to go get additional information. The ServiceNow content came back with really one kind of business service record in my results, but then the majority of my results were from this Kaleo source, which when I click on these, I can then see the details of these, what's the question, what's the answer that was provided, and kind of federate that content amongst my kind of searching ecosystem here. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. Let's go to making requests. So I'm going to go to the Get Things section here. And kind of similarly to what I showed in the Knowledge Browse area, there's some suggestions being pulled out at the top. And these are really based off of who I am, kind of my role, but also some of the activities I perform. So based off of things that I've ordered, based off of records that have been flagged as relevant for me, based off of related items that are related to things that I've ordered. It's kind of bubbling up certain things for me to kind of request that are more relevant for me based off of and pulled out of our full repository. I can always kind of browse through the different catalogs and find different items for me to request, say an iPhone, right? Or I can also, much like my previous example, I can do some searching right here. I want to look for something like DocuSign, and I'm going to find, in this case, a request form to submit a role change. Now, one thing I want to highlight here is that I can see that this particular item to request is part of a business service called DocuSign. And if I want to learn more about that, I can click on this link, which will take me to what we kind of affectionately call our service tombstone. I also call it a service brochure. And so some of the things that we're providing to the consumers here in terms of clarity of how the service is provided is kind of what is the service, who it's available to, who are the key contacts. Here's that service owner that Don mentioned. I've also got a title here of service manager. These services can also come in different flavors, right? So this one has a basic offering, a standard offering, a business pro offering. And it gives some background on what's included, what's not included, and then some of the service commitments that are being made. I also have an area where I can see health and status information. I can subscribe or unsubscribe to updates related to that service. Here's where some of those request forms are present. And then because this one did have service commitments, there is some transparency provided here in terms of how well it's actually performed. And then as I'm browsing, there's might be some related services that I want to learn more information about. I can click on those and find those. And then I can also see, and there's some actions I can perform in context to this. Right? I can submit an idea to make this service better. Right? Good feedback for that service owner. I can also submit feedback here and rate it, which also becomes helpful information both to the service owner, but also helpful to other consumers of this particular service. I can get help. And I can also become a new subscriber to this. All right, so on this form, this is where it's kind of prompting me for what service offering do I want to was best appropriate for me. I'm going to just go ahead and choose the standard offering of these. This fits best. I can provide some additional details. Let's say additional details are here. All right, and then I can submit my request. And this comes back with me kind of a confirmation receipt, which I can then track the status of this particular request. Kind of see where it's at within its life cycle. Right, I also get various alerts up here that kind of highlight as it's moving through the stages, or in this case, as it was opened. I can always come back to those as well. And I can always go look at my other requests and see where they're at in their life cycle. Right, or come back to tracking the progress of this particular request. Now this one is currently waiting for an individual to approve this. So in this case, it gets routed to the service owner, that Alice Smith. So she's out here in her portal. She can see that there's a new request to gain access to DocuSign. She could reject this with some reasons or come in here and say, approve this. right, which is then, let me show you kind of where this thing goes from a workflow perspective. Here's the kind of behind the portal request record. You can see the inputs that we had, the service offering, those details that were captured, the approvals. And then this is where we have kind of that lights out automation kind of activity, is that there's an approval that happens, but then in essence the rest of the workflow that is spawned here goes out and provisions an account for me in DocuSign, adds me to some Active Directory groups, kind of sends me my account information, and then prompts me or asks me to confirm if all is working as I would expect. So as I come over here, I would respond and provide and kind of get access to this. I'm just going to have, just to kind of close this out, I'm going to go ahead and just move this to a completed status. And then once kind of all of this has been set up on my behalf, one thing I'll find is if I go back to that kind of service tombstone, it'll now highlight to me that I am indeed a subscriber of this service. It'll also highlight which offering I am actively subscribed to. And this becomes, important from a provider perspective, in that if we have changes to this offering, we want to change the price, we want to change what's included, I become a targeted recipient of that information. Right? It also becomes, as it pertains to things like change management, if there's outages or alerts, I become a targeted individual to send information to as it pertains to this, the health and or state of this particular service. Right? And if I wasn't already subscribed to this service from a health alerts perspective, it would add me to that as well as part of that kind of becoming a new subscriber activity. One other thing just to highlight on the back end of that workflow, and as it did also send me kind of a survey down here to provide service feedback and context to this new DocuSign service that I use. And you see it's not due for 29 days. So the idea here is that I would start using DocuSign, but I would kind of be expected to provide some feedback within that initial 30-day window, so that as a new subscriber we can get, from the new subscribers we can get information about how well the service is meeting or missing their needs, and kind of drive that service improvement activity. This is a relatively simple form. Right? So I come in here, I can say I'm happy, service is great so far. Right, and I can submit that feedback, except something went wrong, so I'll have to try later. But that, in essence, would be the form I would submit. On the other end of this, let me highlight too, so Alice Smith had her approvals routed to her in context of this service. She also would get various messages in terms of managing this DocuSign service. Some are informational, like this one, like there's a new subscriber. But if there was an outage or a service degradation event, or if there was a breach in an SLA or other kind of commitment that were tied to the service, those would be other alerts or events that she would get as well to kind of proactively manage the kind of delivery of this. And so her view is a little different than me as a consumer. This is more of a dashboard view. The alerts and information which is suppressed at the top would be here. I can see health about this service, but also if there's dependent parts, like this service is related to other services, other applications and servers. I can see kind of the health of my kind of ecosystem, my metrics, right? If I need service feedback, it would show here on the right as well, and this is kind of a management area. So I think as far as that, one other thing I want to highlight just before I kind of close, I want to highlight, so that was kind of an example of a service automation kind of to gain access to a new application and kind of provisioning, kind of lights out automation to gain access. A couple other points I want to hit on that are other common service automations we see kind of funneling through the ServiceNow platform. One of the items that was in my I want to list at the top was password reset. We still see password and account management kind of high on a lot of people's lists. It still is a high volume activity, so certainly that's an area that I think certainly would make sense to try to put service automations in place. As I said, I hit on too, we did the access provisioning to identity management solutions. I think data center management, computing power is an area that we see quite a bit of work there as well. And sometimes it's as simple as having just good end-to-end workflow to manage the steps of provisioning new equipment and managing it within the CMDB. But also, you can augment that with automation to things like VMware or to EC2 or to Azure, right? Or Puppet Chef are also hooks you can tie into that. I'd say the software ordering and provisioning is something we also see very commonly set up in terms of a process where you tie ServiceNow to, say, an SAP or a PeopleSoft or Oracle Financials and kind of drive that from an end-to-end request to delivery kind of activity. So there's a couple of automations. I guess maybe one I'll just hit on last year too is employee events, onboarding, offboarding. Obviously, high visibility to your employees can set the tone for how they start work with you. And obviously, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of those activities to be orchestrated and or automated as part of that provisioning opportunity. So that kind of completes what I wanted to show today. I certainly thank the time, and I hope this was helpful in sparking some thoughts for service catalog solutions.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. So if you found any of this interesting, here are some possible next steps. You might be interested in our advanced self-service portal and catalog. It's available as a fully functioning self-service demo. It's fun. It's easy to use. It's intuitive. Over 1,200 people have signed up for it. You can get your own login from our website and be using it in 5 minutes, or you can download a demo version from the ServiceNow store if you so choose. Perhaps you're interested in establishing a better sort of customer-centric direction. Maybe consider taking a deeper look at our 2-week service catalog or service portal and catalog strategy and roadmap offering, which really helps get all this stuff going on the right track. And we do guarantee your satisfaction with it as well. Last, perhaps you're interested in a better way to meet your ServiceNow demand. Check out our entirely new way of delivering services with Evergreen Evolve. So that is, I think, everything we have to cover today, and we have a couple of questions that we can answer.
We do, and Don, the first one is for you.
You.
Don gets so few questions, so it's very exciting for him. You mentioned the Pareto principle. How often does it apply to what you find?
Okay. So far, 100% of the time. And I'll give you a common example, a common story about that. We were engaged by one client to help them with about 350 IT services or requests that they had that were not very customer-centric, right? So they weren't really happy with what they were getting. And as we looked into those, we found that only 25 of the services made up over 80% of the volume, right? So well beyond the Pareto principle. And this is a really good thing that we don't get the benefit of, right? We should, okay? IT, and I say IT, we make life pretty hard because we're very used to doing everything for everyone, and it tends to be in a one-off kind of custom way. So it's that one-to-one interaction, that one-to-one response. And because of this, we don't in IT think really very much about the Pareto principle or get the benefit from it. And in that example of that client, if we had only re-engineered those 25 services, made them amazing, and done the rest by custom request, it would have been a perfectly fine outcome.
Great. Don, thanks so much. Sorry, just had someone raise their hand, but I think they put it back down. So if you had the question, please either raise your hand again or type that in. Jeff, what external search sources have you seen integrated with ServiceNow?
So I would say, in general, most of the customers that we've kind of talked to or worked with are kind of in early stages of looking at what I would kind of call enterprise search, which is kind of incorporating multiple sources, internal, external. And I'd say many of them, the solutions that we see pretty commonly are places where you have SharePoint, maybe an intranet site, and maybe ServiceNow kind of content combined. But I'd say that, Don mentioned a couple that I think would be good candidates to incorporate, like WikiHow, YouTube certainly has some useful content that to incorporate into your searches. Not to mention, I think any forums or product-specific kind of wiki pages would, kind of bring, the enterprise search solution to kind of, provide great value to, I think, to your consumers.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Jeff, another one for you. Is the community feature new to ServiceNow?
Yeah, somewhat. I think it was added in the Geneva release, if my memory is correct. And it is, I'd say that one thing I want to point with it too is that it is a feature that's going to be evolving further. And then I think for those of you who are going to Knowledge 17, you might hear more about this at the show. I'm just speculating. Because I know with Jakarta, they are widening the solution to kind of have what they're kind of calling or reterming in the community or the collaborative kind of space. And it's going to take on an experience very similar to what you'd find on the ServiceNow community site that kind of rivals Jive and some other kind of products out there that do that kind of collaborative community. And also, where ServiceNow is really kind of targeting a lot of that is towards their customer service application. And having a community-based set of content for end customers, basically.
Okay, great, thanks. Jeff, one more for you, and this is the last question, so if anyone else has any more questions, please get them into the chat panel. Jeff, are there any special licenses needed to accomplish what was demoed today?
No. So a couple, I guess, highlights I'll say. So the business service kind of tombstone, as we call it, that comes from activating what's called the Service Portfolio plugin. There's actually a couple plugins there to activate, though that is part of the core kind of CMDB license or extension of the CMDB. The portal itself is kind of built off of the Service Portal, which is, and there's also Survey there, which is also part of the core license. But our plugins that get activated. The only part I would say that has any kind of license implications is that as part of the kind of request that I made to gain access to DocuSign, there was a part of the workflow there that connected to Active Directory through PowerShell scripting, which would be part of kind of the ServiceNow orchestration license. Though I will say the rest of that workflow, even connecting to our identity management solution, is using things like web services, which are not, there's no special license needed for that.
Okay, great. I don't see any more questions. So one thing I would like to mention, Jeff mentioned Knowledge 17. We will be there. We are a silver sponsor at Knowledge 17 this year in Orlando. We would love to see you. Jeff will be there doing demos throughout the day in our booth, and that's booth number 718. So I hope you will stop by and meet Jeff, meet Don. We'll be there along with our sales team. And also we have some more webinars coming up, so please check back to the resources page. I believe we've got one on the 13th and then around the 30th or 31st off the top of my head, but please check the resources page at evergreensys.com, and I will get those dates and registration pages up this week. Thank you. And
one other thing, Jeff, for Knowledge 17, we will be demonstrating version 4 of our Service Portal and Catalog, which literally just got released, so it's brand new, and there are hundreds of improvements over previous versions. So if you haven't seen it, before today, you haven't seen it. So please come by.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Keep an eye out for an email from ReadyTalk, the same address that sent you your confirmation tomorrow, and you'll have the link for the recording and the slides. Thanks.